Michael Davies joining us here from the Men in Blazers on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Michael?
Hey, Rich, I can't believe you're making me miss Iran-Spain for this. No one's listening to this. No one's watching your show. Rich, the whole nation are gripped by the 0-0 draw going on right now. Iran and Spain.
Well, Spain's on edge right now, would you not say, Michael? Would you say?
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, this is as you saw, Belgium held scoreless in the first half. We will see. We will see. Yes, Spain would like a result against Iran. They might expect it.
Well, I know you can also multitask. You do that for a living, so you can have this chat while watching that 0-0 game in the 31st minute as we're chatting right now.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not going to be distracted. I don't have a TV in front of me. I'm not watching anything.
Okay. Well, I'll give you an update if they score. I'll just burst right in the middle of all this. What do you think is the story of the World Cup so far, Michael?
Well, the story of the World Cup so far, I think VAR, to a certain extent, the video assistant referee is the story of the World Cup. It's the star that nobody knows. We're actually seeing some sensible calls made by refs in this World Cup. There are a couple of missed calls. There are a few teething problems. But VAR is really making a massive impact. And I think some of the big players, I think there was a moment in that opening round, Cristiano Ronaldo, that free kick against Spain, right at the end, he has announced himself as the GOAT. He's even grown a little beard to prove it.
And he scored his fourth goal of the tournament to get Portugal 3 points, and which, again, is what puts a little bit of pressure on Spain here today, needing a result, to use your phrase.
But we're still very early, Rich. We can all get overexcited. It's still very early in the scheme of a World Cup. And I think we're going to see, we've almost had a surplus of narrative with the host nation, Russia, doing so well. So many headed goals, like a ridiculous number of headed goals, ridiculous number of goals from set pieces. This ball that flies through the air at almost rocket-like speeds. It's been very good so far. It's been very good football.
Well, and then the header from Harry Kane in the 91st minute the other night against Tunisia. Can Kane run for office, do you think, right now?
Kane doesn't need to run for office. We've still got a House of Lords. He could probably be invited into the monarchy at this point. I think the ratings for that game in Britain dwarf the ratings for the royal wedding. They'd probably let him have Meghan Markle at this point and just move into the palace.
Just the scenes of the exhale that he provided, I guess, because 1 point wouldn't have been the end of the world, as you'd like to say it. As you were saying, it's early.
It would have been fine.
But mentally, though, mentally,
obviously, that win makes a massive difference. A goal, Harry Kane always there in the right place. How they're leaving him unmarked in the box, it's staggering. A great goal, a better finish than it looked. Harder goal to go and score. And this young England team, this team of babies, Rich, this literal team of babies are holding the hopes of the nation on their backs. I love the scenes. I don't know if you saw them when they cut to the scenes in London at the viewing parties of people going insane.
Oh, yeah.
And the first thing, Roger and I looked at each other immediately and said, wow, there's going to be some unattractive babies conceived across England tonight.
Fantastic. We'll check back in 10 months, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Unattractive children. Eyes very close together. Ears all over their heads. Going to be very weird.
Michael Davies of Men in Blazers, along with Roger Bennett. He's here on the Rich Eisen Show. Mueller saying that Germany misjudged the situation against Mexico. What do you think he meant by that, Michael?
It reminds me of the England manager in 1990 when asked after they drew an opening round game against Cameroon. They asked the England manager if they'd underestimated Cameroon. He goes, no, we didn't underestimate them. We just didn't realize how good they were going to be. And I think that Mexico took Germany by storm. I think they came out early. I think they got them on the back foot. The Germans are not used to being on the back foot. Well, not in about 63 years, Rich. 73 years at this point. But they struggle to deal with the Mexican energy and aggression. And for me, other than Ronaldo, the best team performance in this World Cup so far has been what Mexico did against the world champions, the Weltmeister, Germany.
So we were discussing this off air, and I'd like to bring it on air right now with you, Michael, is that parity was the word that you used with me when we were talking the other day. Is this wide open? Is this really like anybody could take this tournament right now?
It's very wide open. Look at what happened to Argentina in the first round. Look at what happened to Brazil in the first round. Both those teams tied. Germany lost. These are the three favorites going into the tournament. France needed a very, very, very late goal, deflected goal in order to beat the Socceroos. So I think we got a lot of parity, that the elite teams aren't as good as that next level of teams, and then aren't so much better than the next level of teams, and the next level of teams aren't so much better than some of the minnows. Even Saudi Arabia, who were humiliated in their opening game in Russia, came back, played Uruguay pretty close today.
And would you say it's fair that Suarez knocked out Liverpool and Egypt essentially with one fell swoop in Kiev in the Champions League final a few weeks ago?
Well, Ramos, you mean? Yeah, Ramos did it, I think, with bringing Mo Salah to the ground. I mean, that was Sergio Ramos. Roger has posited that he's sort of part of a sleeper cell Russian KGB agency, and that Ramos was actually probably born in I don't know, somewhere deep in Siberia, and was sort of transported to Spain as a child in order to injure Mo Salah in complete anticipation of a rogue nation 2018 World Cup.
Right, I misspoke. So you could say that, though, right? I mean, that moment took Egypt out essentially, right?
Yeah, because Egypt, rather like Portugal with Ronaldo, Egypt are Mo Salah, and we've been robbed of a player who should have been one of the huge stars of this World Cup.
And then you've been on tour, right? The tour that you were promoting here with Roger. How's that tour been, Michael?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. We just did the West Coast Swing, which also involved a very weird trip to St. Louis as part of the West Coast Swing. I guess that's the gateway to the West. But St. Louis, a podcast at the airport in Minneapolis, that was sort of the highlight, and then Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA. It's been great. I'll tell you, a couple of things occurred to me on this tour. Mm-hmm. One, if you go to any American city now and you make mention of another American city, the boos that rain down, the bile that is spewed from the audience, I think there is a lot of intercity hatred in America, and that bodes very well for the future of American soccer, because I think intercity hatred is a very important thing, even in these United States of America. We've also been talking a lot about, and we had Billy Bean on the show in San Francisco. We talked with Billy Bean about whether American soccer, Rich, is just too middle class. And if it's fair to expect the best middle class kids in America to travel around the world and to beat the best working class kids from every other nation. Because if there was a middle class World Cup, America would win it going away. No one would beat our middle class kids at football. We have the best middle class players in the world.
Do you think there are because we were talking about last hour, Michael Davies, a couple more minutes with Michael Davies of Men in Blazers, that there's a kind of a soccer snob here in the United States that doesn't like folks like me or Chris Brockman, you met a couple of weeks ago here on the set, surfing in, just parachuting in once every 4 years to pay attention. Do you think that's existing?
I mean, there are all sorts of soccer elitists, just as there are basketball elitists and football elitists, and believe me, the golf elitists came out, in force last weekend after Shinnecock. Yeah, there are soccer elitists, but there are people who dislike the casual fan. There are people who dislike the fan of European soccer. There are people who dislike people who like the MLS. There are people who dislike the people who dislike the people. And it's just, I sort of feel like anybody who's interested in soccer at any time, in any team, in any form, is like a rising tide lifts all boats, and it would be good for everybody just to enjoy all of it. Football should be fun. This is why I love Telemundo's coverage. With all great respect to our friends at Fox, watching the World Cup on Telemundo, Rich, is one of the great joyous experiences of life. You don't even have to like sport. You don't have to speak Spanish. You don't have to like football to enjoy watching football on Telemundo.
I need to do that then. I got to do that. I got to check it out. So,
the Spain-Portugal game, which ended 3-3 on English language television, ended 9-9 on Telemundo.
That's right. Before I let you go, Michael, because the U.S. was out, we the three of us here on our show pulled names out of a hat to adopt as our adopted nation.
Okay, interesting.
Chris chose Argentina. He pulled Argentina. My man Mike chose Japan. And I chose Mexico, which was phenomenal when I started rooting for Mexico on Twitter, and people were throwing the words Wells Fargo and Landon Donovan at me, and I had no idea. Exactly. I had no idea why. I had to look it up. Who do you think does have the advantage when it's all said and done between the three of us?
I think Mexico. I think you probably in Mexico, but Mike with Japan. Japan are in that upside down group, Group H, where Japan with that win over Colombia, heartbreaking loss for Colombia, and after Poland lost also. Japan are in pretty good shape as well. I think that Mexico have a chance of going fairly deep in this tournament, though.
That'd be great. That would be great because we have a last longer. The two who doesn't last longest has to dress in full kit and regalia. That's fantastic.
Well, I got to tell you, actually, on Telemundo, Mexico have already won the World Cup. They gave the trophy and it's all done. They're just playing the rest as sort of like the backdoor. It's like the NIT going on right now. So, like, if from a Telemundo level, you've already won, Rich.
Michael, there you go. I love it. Michael, always appreciate it. You guys were great hanging out with you guys a few weeks ago, and I look forward to chatting again during this World Cup.
Cool, Rich. Thank you so much.
That's Michael Davies at Embassy Davies.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.